Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our nation has to offer, especially health care. Across every state and every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
Excuse me! Taxi!
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
And joining us now is Senator Dave McCormick from the great state of Pennsylvania, also a former Army officer. I love that. Senator, this is a huge night. How important is this night tonight for President Trump and also really for America?
Well, thanks to you both for having me. I mean, tonight is an incredible night. First of all, I'm so excited to be there and be part of it. But I think it's going to give the president an opportunity to really talk about all the really remarkable things that have happened over the last year. He and I campaigned together 15 or 16 times in Pennsylvania in 2024, and he promised that he was going to have energy dominance. He promised he was going to close the border and stop the flow of fentanyl that killed 4,000 people in Pennsylvania last year. He promised that he would bring down inflation and increase wages and create great-paying jobs for Pennsylvanians and for the country. He promised peace through strength by rebuilding our military. He's done all those things. And there's work still to be done in terms of bringing down health care and housing and so forth, but we've made enormous progress under his leadership. And I think that's what tonight will be an opportunity to just take stock and describe America. Has there ever been a president in modern history that's done what he said to the degree that President Trump has done what he said? And it's going to be a great night.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Senator. I mean, interest rates are coming down, energy costs are down, it's important that the fact is that Americans trust their voting system. And between those three things, I mean, what could be more important than that?
No, you're so right about that. You know, I gave a speech on the floor last week where I laid out the argument for the Save America Act, and this is something I've been a strong sponsor of. And you're right, John. First of all, we do have evidence of fraud in our voting system. I experienced it in my election in Pennsylvania, where there was very explicit attempts to circumvent the law. But beyond that, more than half of Americans don't trust the voting system. That's a disaster. In a country, in a republic like ours, in a democracy like ours, we have to have people trust their democratic process. And this is a no-brainer. This is an 80-20 issue where people believe that people should have to register and prove they're American citizens to vote. That's the law. And that they should have to show an ID when they go to vote. And that's what's going to be required here. And that's what is absolutely in the Save America Act. 80% of Americans believe it. We should force the Democrats to get on the floor and describe why they don't believe that Americans should have voter registration and voter ID. I think it's a tough case to make.
Senator, let me ask you a question I don't really know the answer to, but I'm sure you do. Is the fact, since with federal elections involved in November 3rd, can he do it by executive order that you have to be an American citizen to vote in a federal election?
Well, you know, there's some debate on that. It's certainly in the Constitution that the Congress has the absolute right to give guardrails and ensure that the law, in this case, that only American citizens can, is being implemented. Even though the Constitution provides that the states manage their election, the federal government certainly has the right to impose a law. So the constitutional argument against the Save America Act is not a good one, and that's why we need to pass the law. What the president can do with executive order, I think I think remains to be seen, but there's certainly a lot of things that he'll be able to do in terms of Social Security numbers and the census, as an example, that'll make sure that illegal immigrants have less likelihood of being able to vote.
You know, Senator McCormick, one of the other things that everybody's talking about is who won't be there at the State of the Union tonight. There are all these Democrats, senators and also other members of Congress that will not be attending. They're doing this alternate event. And John Fetterman, Senator John Fetterman from the state of Pennsylvania, there's obviously good water there in Pennsylvania, because he came out and said, you know what, even if you don't respect the president, however you feel, respect the office, you should be there. He's angry at his fellow Democrats. What's your reaction that a lot of them are very openly boycotting the State of the Union?
I think it's disgraceful and a real sign of disrespect. And, you know, you can get me to this, if there's a Democratic president, at some point when I'm serving in the Senate, and even if I had fundamental disagreements with that person, I would certainly attend the State of the Union. It's a tradition, part of the American tradition, that the one time a year the president gives a State of the Union address and a state of the Republic. And so I think this is political theater. And unfortunately, that the Democrats have become more likely to do. That's what's happening with the shutdown of the DHS funding. It's political theater. It's not stopping ICE or the Border Patrol. They're already funded. That's what's happening with this people not attending the State of the Union. It's political theater to try to appease the left wing part of their party, which is unfortunately a very big part, their radical left base, and it stands in the way of good government and stands in the way of getting things done. So I'm disappointed. I hope the majority will show up and be able to listen to the president respectfully and hopefully see that many of the things he promised are happening and working.
The other big item that everybody has an argument about is sanctuary cities. A lot of our lawyers are saying that there's no such thing in the Constitution as a sanctuary city, and the federal government has absolute control over that. Do you think, in your opinion, should he say anything about sanctuary cities and just say the way it is?
Yeah, listen, the law's the law. And so here we have two things. We have a president who ran. I mean, you didn't have to guess what Donald Trump was for. He was very specific. He said he was going to enforce the immigration laws. He was going to close the border, enforce the immigration laws. And he said he was going to repatriate and send home illegal immigrants that were here in the United States. And the majority of the American people, both of the Electoral College and the popular vote, elected him to do what he promised. That's the first thing. Second thing is the law is the law. I don't like some of the laws, but we're all obligated as citizens to abide by the law. And when you have these sanctuary cities where they're not abiding by the law, the federal government has every right to come in and enforce the law. And I think that's what's happening in some of these cities, and I think quite appropriately. And the public officials who disagree with the president, as happened in Minnesota, I think have every right to disagree with the president. They don't have every right to encourage people to violate the law. And unfortunately, that's what happened there, and that's, I think, that things turned violent, and we had the protest and so forth. So public officials have to stand tall and say, listen, I don't always agree with the law, but I got to enforce it.
Well, Senator Dave McCormick, thank you very much. It's really great to have you here. Everybody's going to be watching the State of the Union address tonight. Let's see if the president talks about so many of these big topics, and we're really happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Have a great night.
Thank you, Senator, and enjoy the evening.
Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our country has to offer, especially health care. Across every state, every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.